I know right now there's some kid in his house making beats, probably thinking like, I'm never going to get out of here, right? And just does it for fun. And it's like, those are the kids I want to find. The whole music thing, I've wanted it since I was a kid. Like 10 years old, I could have told you what I wanted. There is a lot of people that don't realize how much of your life you have to sacrifice. I think for anybody who's wanted something their entire life and for them to see it actually happening, it can be overwhelming in the best way. There's things that I've wanted since I was a kid and they're happening. So I have no other option but to believe that this works. I can't tell you the amount of times I was like, I quit, I'm over. And then all of a sudden I'll hear a beat and I'm like,
coming back.
But what if I did this, right? Like at the end of the day, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
So what does it hurt to at least ask?
Jay-Z said it best. Closed mouths don't get fed.
Absolutely, 100%. So it's like, shoot your shot, go
keep
for
your
it.
Mouth open. All right, ready to start?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Welcome back to Two for Eyes podcast, where we document the rise and stardom of Winnipeg's talent and personalities, aka the #1 podcast in Winnipeg. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, show us some love, get us our goal. That's what we want. 1,000 is where we at, and that's where we want to get to. I'm not going to waste no time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on our guest today. She's a female entrepreneur turning side hustles into dreams. She's been a co-host, a radio host, club promotion, so much more. Now in management for Lavish. Please welcome. It's Marcela J.
Thank you. Thank you
Let's
for
go.
having me. This is great. I love it.
Thank you for coming.
Great energy.
We try.
It's all about the vibes. It's all about the vibes. I love it.
I was looking through your profile yesterday, and I'm fascinated by your story. First of all, starting from the Latino culture in Winnipeg and Hispanic culture. Like, explain. Let's start from the beginning.
All the way back.
Let's start from there. We are Two for Rise, so let's talk about your rise.
Talk about the rise.
Yeah.
The Latin culture, when unfortunately in Winnipeg there really wasn't anything going. Growing up, Folklorama was a big deal for us. I'm Salvadorian. We had a great pavilion party Friday, Saturday. That's where everybody came to have fun. Unfortunately, after I don't know how many years, it came to an end.
Sure.
And for about 2 years, I heard people kind of complaining, there's nowhere to go. And my whole mentality is you can either complain or you can try to do something about it. Yeah. So I took the reins. I was like, let's put a Latin thing together. Let's do a party. I hope people show up.
Sure.
So I got the back room of, depending on how old you are, the back room of Republic or Citizen or EEC, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I got the back room from there, and I was like, I hope 50 people show up. And through the first one, completely sold out, line around the block the entire night, and I was like, I think I have something.
Let's go.
But strategically, I actually didn't put my name to it. I named it Deseo, and I wanted to build the brand. So for 2 years, nobody knew who was throwing these parties. There was speculations and this and that. Finally, when everything was the way I wanted it, that's when I kind of put my face to it, and that's when people started realizing who it was. So I was the only female promoter. I did it for 12 years, which I actually am planning another Deseo FYI is coming up soon, but 12 years, only female promoter, only one doing Latin jams. I saw it from the beginning when nobody was playing any type of Latin music. And I've seen the growth where I love it. Now I get DJs that message me and are asking for a playlist and playing this. And I go to any nightclub and they're playing Latin music. And the culture and mainstream for music is now here. What we've been fighting for as a Latin community is here. And I think it's a blessing. I love it.
How does that feel when you know that you were one of the founding members of putting this specific genre on the map in Winnipeg?
I mean, when you say that to me, it blows my mind. I remember someone said to me, I went to a club and I heard Latin music being played. And I thought wow, she did it. And I'm not going to take credit for it. I think when it comes to the Latin community, when it comes to mainstream music, all of that, Despacito made a big difference, right? I'm not going to take credit for that because I think what's happening is way bigger than me. Sure. But I definitely appreciate when people stop and say, I went to a club and I thought of you because I feel like you had a print in it, When we have teams now, they're doing weekly Fridays, weekly Saturday of Latin, and they're doing well. And, there's a party going on tomorrow, and the guys reached out to me, and they're like, we do this, and, we saw you do it forever. And that to me, it feels good to know that people look at you and say, yeah, you left a print, and because of you, you laid the bricks so that we could walk and do what we do now. I think that's amazing.
Was that always the goal?
No, honestly, it was just like, I want to get the community together. Exactly. I never thought I would last over a decade. I never thought I would have nights where there was almost 800 people showing up. I'm one girl, right? Like, I really didn't think so. But now I think that's the reason it's happening that way, is because I started off with the right intent. And I always have this saying is, if you leave with the right intent, the money will come. Mm-hmm. Leave with the right intent. Exactly. So the intention was to bring the community together. Over a decade later, when people come up to me and they say, because of you, I think that's the biggest compliment you can give me. And you're doing it. And people are, applauding you, and likewise, and you deserve your flowers and your celebration. Thank you. I appreciate that. Even someone who's not like totally immersed in that type of music, but even looking at your stuff, I could see that there is something that, you had an idea and you went towards it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you could also associate culturally, right? When you're ethnic, it's not always easy to have your music or your culture received in such a positive way. So to see that happening now, I'm just absolutely adore it. I love it. Okay. Yeah. So you threw your first event, and you said you sold out. And was it always just a gradual increase, or was there ups and downs? I am one of the few that has been really fortunate. I've never had a bad night. I've never lost money, which was shocking. Yeah. When I finally kind of announced I was officially going to end as a promoter, like, I had DJs and promoters message me, and they're like, someone said to me, "You're the Mayweather of promotions. You never lost a single night. Like, you did well." So I never had that portion. I'm really lucky that my community backed me the way that they did. Mm-hmm. So I definitely give them their props, because, yes, I have something for them, but they have to support it too. And they really, really had my back throughout the entire time. Mm-hmm. And what did those years entail? Like, was it everything by yourself, or did you bring on a team eventually? It started with me, my close friend Oscar, and my sister. It's like, this is back in the day when you had to do flyers, right? Yeah. It's Winnipeg winter. It's minus 42. We're putting flyers on cars. Like, it was just us grinding it out, trying to get something going. It really was just me. And then from there, I would partner up with mostly the DJs, right? And I always tried to give people opportunities. So DJ David Gomez immigrated here from DR, and like, for about 2 years, nobody would hire him. Like, nobody knew who he was. I told him, send me a mix. He sent me a mix. I'm like, wow, this guy's amazing. Let's put him on. So I'd put him on with like someone like Sugar Prince that's well known, and they would like promote. And then we kind of built a little bit of a crew. But as far as having like a straight promoter crew, I never actually really had them. It was really just people really like loving the concept and loving the environment and just reposting and sharing the love. That's really what it was. Nice. Are you? Would you say you're like a good judge of character? I think so. I would like. Yeah. I hope so. Yeah. Like, when somebody is like going towards something, or I think I have a really good knack for spotting like talent. Sure. Right. So I think that for me is what's helped me along the way, because I have this thing too where I always try to give the right people opportunities. And I think in order to be able to give the right person an opportunity, you have to have a good character, and a good judgment of character. How do you develop that? Like, was that always since something? I think it's just part of self-reflection. I think as you grow and you start to learn who you are, you also start to filter out what you like, who you like. And everybody at the end of the day, I would hope, is just trying to be a better person. So as you progress and become a better person, I think it's easier for you to identify people that have good hearts and are kind-hearted, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that definitely helped. And then the motivation part, like I'm really a self-motivator. I consider myself someone that like I get irritated sitting at home. Yeah. So when I see that, I can identify that. Obviously, I'm a female, so any female that I can help out is like, I love it. Yeah. So all of those things play into how I pick who I work with, who I surround myself with. And I think most people will also understand, like, it really comes down to chemistry and vibes. You can feel people's vibes. Of course. And you can feel like what their intentions are. Yeah. Right. I'm also like, I went to university for communication, so I also know how to pick apart words and whatnot. So when someone's talking to me, I can kind of start filtering through what they're saying and like what their intentions really are. Mm-hmm. You mentioned motivation. Are you a huge believer in manifestation? Oh, absolutely. We are here. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, I just had a conversation with a girlfriend of mine last week, and it was literally just about manifestation. Yeah. And that's like a regular conversation with a lot of people around me. I truly believe in it. But I always emphasize, like, you can't just say it and expect things to happen. Like there is work that has to be done. Exactly. But when you put that out there and you start working towards it, I truly do believe in it. Changes your life.
No, we're a huge believer here. Just, you know, just putting it out there, especially you're writing down. Like I'm a huge like person who writes stuff down and just looking at it. And I know that alone is not going to get it, but that's like maybe the first step in my mind.
It makes it real.
Yeah, it's tangible. It definitely makes it real tangible.
Now. You put it out there.
And especially when you see other people who are like on the same road as you, it's great to have like people around you.
It's all the attraction too.
Exactly.
The whole law of attraction plays into that, right? Like, I mean, you have to be realistic. You can't just be like, oh, I want the lottery and like hope it happens, right? But you can set a goal, and then as long as you do the work, I really think that, I mean, I'm very fortunate in the situations that I'm at because there's things that I've wanted since I was a kid and they're happening. So I have no other option but to believe that this works, right?
Was there a lot of learning that you had to do in your club promoting days and even in your radio
definitely world? Yes, definitely. I wouldn't say there was a lot of learning in the aspects of like, oh, how to promote, how to use Facebook. Like that to me was simple. The part that I really had to kind of understand how to react to more than anything, and a lot of people I think could attest to this in a lot of different environments if you're a female, is how you're perceived as a female. Unfortunately, when I started, I remember meeting with club owners and they thought I would run the night for bottle service. That's all they wanted to give me. And like the conversation would obviously switch. I'm here. It's a business for me, which in a weird way earned a lot of respect too. Cause then they'd kind of look at me like, oh, I thought you were just like a party girl, but like you're about your business. Like I'm here to work. Like, so that was a learning curve of not reacting and like still playing it as a game of chess of like, okay, yeah, I'm a female. You're going to, I know I kind of expect you to a certain extent, think I'm a party girl, but like I'm going to flip it on you and then earn your respect. And it worked in that aspect, right? Because
majority of the club promoters are male, I want to
assume. Up until this point, I haven't seen a female. Really hoping to see a female come up, right? But the whole world was a male-driven world, which has kind of been the theme of my life. My jobs are all male-dominated. Promotions was male-dominated. Music is obviously male-dominated. So that part is like a learning curve, but I think I've mastered it. And I've done well, I would say.
And does that give you motivation to be like,
I love it.
I want to be that person?
Yeah, I love it because I know a lot of people would look at it as like a weakness, like, oh, they're going to look at me as a female. I go in there, I'm like, I'm going to surprise you.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And that to me is
prove
like,
them wrong.
It's a motivation. It's motivation for sure.
That's crazy. And like, let's talk about your radio as well. Was that part of, because we're in radio and we're learning, so I want to learn from one of the best, or, you know? What was the radio story like, and why especially radio, and what got you started in the radio? Similar
to the promotion. So for those that don't know, I did 5 years of Latin radio. U of W gave me the opportunity. So same as promotions, there wasn't anybody really playing Latin music, and I wanted that as a staple. So I had already graduated University of Winnipeg, but I went back and I said I wanted to do a show. I pitched them and they had a slot. Originally it was like a Sunday morning slot, right? So I was like, oh, all these people are at church, they're going to listen to me. But because I actually was doing it, the numbers were so well, they ended up shifting me to Friday. So I got a 2-hour slot prime time after work. So I would get people sending me videos because they're driving home from work, listening to the radio. And when they were looking at numbers, I was putting up numbers and getting people from Colombia, from DR, from Mexico. I had people from Chicago, from Miami tuning in, which I have no idea how that happened, but it happened. So I did that. So I had that slot. And then that's actually when La Roca reached out to me and they said, we've been listening to your show. And what if we changed your show into a night? So that's when I got Friday nights at La Roca. So it was perfect because I would do the 2-hour slot in the evening, kind of get you geared up to go out that night. So it was like a little bit of a cross promotion. And then, I started the night at La Roca, did that for 5 years, ended it in the best way possible. I tell people it's very poetic because at that time I was in music management, and literally the last night of my retirement as a promoter was the exact night that Lavish signed to OVO.
Wow.
And like, I had the best night of my life. I didn't feel so well the next day, but that Friday night was great. So everything really lined up for me and went smoothly. And to this day, I have a great relationship with La Roca. I absolutely love the owners. And it was a great time. Great 5 years.
It looks like whatever you started, like you take certain parts of, your, like, let's say the club promotion, you take certain parts of that, build it into your radio. And you took part of that, now you're involving that in music management.
It's almost
Is
like
that true?
these steps.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's almost like these steps, right? The whole music thing, I've wanted it since I was a kid. Like 10 years old, I could have told you what I wanted.
Sure.
As an immigrant child, though, you go to school, you go to university, right? You get your degree because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yep. I'm on that route too.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So you understand it, right? Got to make mom and dad proud. But during the whole club promotion, it was like the love of music. And from there, you start meeting people, right? The DJ, and you bring a DJ from out of town, and that DJ knows this guy that makes a beat and whatnot. And then eventually I became the person that was like a connector. And then I think that's where you naturally start becoming a manager, because aside from being like, I'm hyper organized, I'm very focused, super good at multitasking, then you add that you're a connector, right? And then throughout all that, I met really great people that were on the same path as I. And, you know, we had a couple artists, we learned from them, trial and error, just like anything else. And then we landed on Lavish, and we knew this was something special, and incredible kid. And now, you know, we're in a situation that is exactly what 10-year-old Marcela wanted. But yet in my 30s, I'm like, how is this happening? Right. But it's all lining up, and all those little bits of knowing how to do a concert, knowing how to book things, knowing how to throw a party, knowing how to market, like all those little things that I did throughout my life has led to this moment. And even small things that people probably don't know or don't see. As a kid, I was the kid that on Saturday night, I would watch like music documentaries on like how videos are made. And even those things, right? Like I learned as a kid, and I remember certain things that I learned that led me to now. Wow. And I think all of that has geared me to like uplift me to the position that I'm in now. And hopefully, and I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm in this amazing position. It's just, I'm in exactly where I'm supposed to be in this time and point.
But also another, I want to say, is adapting too, right?
Yeah.
Was it hard to adapt? Like, if people know you as like a club promoter, was it hard to adapt to, okay, now I'm a radio host, and then from there, now is it hard for people to be like, okay, now I'm a manager?
No, I think a lot of people are so used to me just being like, hey guys, I'm doing this. And I'm very particular when I make a decision. So when I go into things, I'm all in. So I think people are used to having a certain level of quality that I think I bring. So whenever I come out and I say, hey guys, I'm doing this, everyone's like, yeah, that would make sense, right?
You can do it.
And even, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I had a family dinner, and my uncle was saying like, oh, you were always about music in one way or another. So none of this surprises me, right? He's like, even when you're a kid and you're dancing, because I think at one point I was like, I'm going to be Janet Jackson's backup dancer. Like that was the goal. Clearly I'm not, but he's like, he's like, you were always in the scene. Like, so none of this surprises me. None of this is luck. None of this is by coincidence. Like it's all come together to put you in exactly where you need to be. So no, I don't think, at least no one's ever brought it to my attention that they're surprised when I do something that's kind of like, yeah, you would do that.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. You know, she puts in the work, it's going to happen.
Go for it, right?
We're very curious about the artist management, because starting off with anything, how do you start in that world, right? There's the artist world, which I'm somewhat familiar with, but you know, because that's what I see, right? Listen to artists, I know their front end, but there's so much on the back end that people don't realize. So
there is a lot of people that don't realize how much of your life you have to sacrifice. Exactly. There's certain things that I've talked to people that approach saying, you know, that I do one here and there mentor people. And that's the main question of like, how do you do it? And there's a couple things that people, I give them the raw. You really have to give a lot of yourself. You have to realize that like, to a certain extent, your life doesn't become yours. It becomes about your artist. Like you have someone else's life in your hands. Don't take that lightly. In regards to starting, I know a lot of people feel, where do I start? Best book to read is, it's literally called The Music Business. If you put it in there, it's the best-selling book for like the last decade. It's by a lawyer. His first name is David. I forget his last name, but he's a music management and lawyer. So he wrote this book, best book you can read. I call it the Bible. I'll put it on my Instagram today, so anybody who wants to see it, you'll see it. So that would be the number one. I literally read that book and I was like, okay, this is almost like a roadmap. From there, I also tell people, they feel like, oh, well, I don't know anybody. And it's really shocking how you do know people. And even in Winnipeg, a lot of people don't realize how many people can help you out in Winnipeg. And also how many people, I mean, you know this, how many people come out of Winnipeg and have something, right?
Yeah.
So work your phone, work your Instagram, work your Facebook. You'd be surprised how this person knows that person that knows that person, right? Yeah. So it's almost like you got to start mapping out and doing like almost like a spider web map and go from there. And then you can start piecing things together. For me, it started with, I met a producer. And then that producer obviously knew other artists, and I was the one that was organizing, helping piece things together. And then you have a conversation with so-and-so and you network, and all of a sudden you have a Rolodex without even realizing it. Yeah. So always be open to being in rooms. I've been in countless rooms for hours on end, not saying anything, just soaking it in. Right? That was, I can't tell you the amount of flights I've taken and studio floors I've slept on, but I did the work, and it is a really long grind. It's not for the faint heart. It's also not for someone who's in it for like just the money, because it is I've been doing this for 12 years. It took 12 years for me to get to this point, and I don't regret any of it. Sure. I'm now in the best place in my life. But it is a really hard journey, and if your heart's not in it, it's just not for you. Like for me, we laugh. We say it's music's like a virus. Like once it's in you, it's in you. Like I can't. Same with promotion. Like I can't tell you the amount of times I was like, I quit. I'm over, and then all of a sudden I'll hear a beat, and I'm like,
I'm coming back.
But what if I did this? Right? Like if it's in you, it's in you, and fight for it. Exactly. Like if you have, and that's not just for music. I tell people, if you find and you know what you want in life, and it doesn't have to provide for your everyday lifestyle. I'm fortunate that mine will work out to do that. But if you have something you love, like fight for it. Because a lot of people don't have the luxury of knowing what they want in life. And that is a luxury.
I agree. One thing I think you really said there that really hit home was that even in Winnipeg, right? We get people who say, Winnipeg's not the market. There's no one here, A lot of people leave Winnipeg to go to Vancouver or the States or whatever. But I do truly believe that there's a lot of talent in Winnipeg.
There is a lot, and it's not just like music, right? Like I can list off a ton of people that are doing something. Far From Ordinary, Shiraz, Steven, Summer of Sound. Like there's promoters doing stuff. Like this city has a lot to offer, and I think platforms like this make a difference because you get to see those people get highlighted. And that's always kind of been a little bit of a complaint of mine, is I'm like, I wish Winnipeg showed a little bit more love to people that are really grinding and hustling and true entrepreneurs. There's a lot of great. I get phone calls. I do get phone calls with people are, I'm back and forth between Winnipeg and Toronto. So I get phone calls of people being like, I want to leave Winnipeg. And I have the conversation of like, there's a lot of good in Winnipeg. I've had a great experience here. I've had a lot of love. I get a lot of support. I will never say anything about Winnipeg except for the fact that I wish there was more people doing platforms like yours and highlighting what the great is of the city. I really, truly believe that.
I appreciate that, first of all. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing. One of the reasons, just because we started that, was one of those reasons. And why do you think people aren't willing to share in Winnipeg? Why do you think there's that negative connotation in Winnipeg?
I don't even think it's a negative. I think it's starting to shift.
Yeah,
I'm noticing the shift. I think it's more of a generational thing. Sure. Now, obviously, there's more. Social media is the staple for everything. So I think there's more exposure now going around. But I think I would love to see more billboards of people that are doing something for the city or have come up from the city or achieved something. Like I'm biased on this, but it's like I would love to see a Lavish billboard saying congratulations, you're now in like an OVO situation. Like that to me is like, I would love to see those things. So, but I think it's a generational, and I think it's slowly is shifting, which is great. Sure. I just, I'm impatient in that aspect.
Yeah. It does take a while, but it is coming. It is coming. And we hope that is coming, of course. Let's talk about you. We mentioned Lavish a couple of times. How was meeting him and figuring out, you said you did a whole bunch of artists before that, correct?
Yeah, we did a couple artists before that. And, just like anything, it's a learning curve and didn't work out or whatnot. And then Lavish was, oddly enough, I actually didn't meet him here. Okay. So my team flew him out to Toronto, and then I flew out to meet him. Sure. And I laugh because the first time he was recording, when you're listening to an artist record, I couldn't hear the music, so I'm just hearing his voice. And I kid you not, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't don't know about this one. Like, but I didn't say anything. Right. And then 2 seconds later, he turns the music on, and instantly I was like, this is it.
Wow.
This is it. He has this thing. I can't even explain it. I guess it's the it factor that people talk about, but I instantly became a believer. I'm like, okay, I'm in, right? Creatively, he was making 3 songs a day, and I'm not talking about like just songs, like great songs. And then it just became the artist development, and I'm itching to release the new music. We all are, because if it is the way that I see it, everybody's gonna like rock with it.
Yeah. And what is, like, as a manager, what is your role in terms of?
Well, in our camp, I mean, there's a few managers. It's a team. It's a team of 4 managers, but really we have a whole army at this point. Okay. For me, it can go anywhere from finding producers, finding mixers, setting up sessions. One day I'm booking flights to LA and we're taking off. Another day we're looking at venues, we're throwing a party. Another day we're doing a video. Like, you're wearing so many hats. You don't really have like a label to say, I do this, right? You kind of do everything. And I think that's probably what works for me too, because otherwise I'd just be bored. But our team is really good. We're really good at communicating with each other and making sure everything's taken care of and that he has what he needs. And it's not just the artistic part, it's also emotionally, right? He is a person at the end of the day. So we got to make sure we develop him as an artist and also as a man, make sure he's on the right path. So we play a lot of different roles. Sometimes I'm the mom of the whole crew, right? And did you eat? Did you sleep? And then sometimes I'm the enforcer, where I have to have difficult conversations, and that's part of the game, right? And if you are fortunate like me, where you have a team as close as us, those difficult conversations are always out of love.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
So it's always well received.
What about, like, I'm into music as well, but as far as like looking at artists, there's been many people who come out and say the music industry is ruthless.
It is.
And there's, there's a dark side to the music industry, and that artists are not getting what they need. Yeah. What's your opinion on that, and how does that work in terms of, from your perspective?
I mean, it is. And again, we're really fortunate that we've been on the path that we are. One, as a female, right? There's so many horror stories that you hear, and I knew that going in. I'm really lucky to have the team of guys, because I'm the only female on my team as well. Okay. So to have the team of guys around me offers that protection. I've never, thankfully, been in a situation where I felt uncomfortable or compromised. It's always been clear. We've also luckily been in situations where we know how to negotiate properly, and we also know when to bring someone out, like a lawyer, to sit at the table for us. And the egos don't exist. We know what we're good at and we know what we're not. So we always make sure we put ourselves in the best situation. And at the end of the day, like I mentioned earlier, the artist is an artist, but you have their life in your hands. So you have to make the best decision for them. And we've had conversations where, if as much as, they're a label, and I'm not saying OVO specifically, but like, this label is this, and like, it'd be so cool to sign, like, okay, that's great, but is it the right deal? At the end of the day, it's all about being the right deal, regardless of who's the one offering it to you. So that's been our mentality as a team. So that's changed the conversations a lot. There's been situations where we're like, if they don't say this, then we're going to walk away, because you're not trying to sell your soul. Of course, yeah. Right? So, and I think now there is, with, streaming and this and that, the artist does have more power, and it's starting to shift. Back in the day, if you didn't have the labels, who are the machine, you're not getting anywhere. You're not going to get radio. You're not going to get album sales. There's no marketing. But now you can do that yourself, and you can do it from your phone. Yeah. So there's a little bit more power given to the artists and the team, which I think is great, and I hope that keeps shifting. There obviously still is a lot of work to be done, because it is really ruthless, but we've been really fortunate in the fact that, we're all the same in my team. We move the same way. Our expectations are the same.
What do you look for in terms of these deals? Like, if a major label is coming to you and asking certain things, certain percentages, certain whatever upfront costs, what are like some staple factors that you really think about?
We always want to make sure that we can have as much creative control is really important to us, right? Because that's also the livelihood of an artist. The other factor is people need to realize that, when you see artists and it's like, they signed for 10 million, and you as an artist are sitting there thinking, I want to sign for 10 million. That's a $10 million loan.
Yeah.
That's like, they're expecting their money back. So for us, sometimes it's based on, you know what, let's take a lot less, but be able to get a lot more in the long run, be able to keep more of our masters or more of publishing or, again, creative control. So we have done really well of stretching every dollar.
Yeah.
So we know that if we get a smaller bag, to us, that's like amazing, right? Like we've been nickel and diming for so many years. So that's really the trade-off is, well, at the end of the day, this is a loan. So just like anybody, you want to get out of that loan as quickly as possible, whether it's a car loan, whether it's a house, you want to be debt-free, quote unquote. And so that's our decisions.
That's the business model of the labels, correct?
Yeah.
They just, could you explain how those, like, why is it a loan and why is that the way that the
well, a lot of
work?
like, especially starting deals are going to be recoup, right? I mean, every deal is recoup, but they'll do a 360 where they're going to take a percentage off of everything in your life, right? But they put in that 10 million, and I'm using 10 million as a rough number. Just let's say 10 million, expecting that they're going to make 20, right? Like it's just like any other investment. When you put in money in a stock, it's because you're expecting to get a return, right? So the industry works exactly the same. It's just like any other transaction or financial transaction. They want their money back. They're not, no label's going to give you money not expecting to get it back and then some, right? But the higher the number is, obviously the more there is like guidelines and it's like any other loan. If you're going to take a really big loan, well, there's going to be a little bit more guidelines on what they expect you to do. And, you know, so it works just like anywhere else. Do
you have any stories of certain conversations that you've had or certain moments in your career that you were like, wow, I can't believe I'm here right now? Or...
Yeah, I have like...
It's a Winnipeg girl who's like...
I have these moments, and I was just talking to a friend 2 nights ago about it, because she said, you know, like, how does it feel? And they're very far and few, I'll be honest with you. Some people say, like you need to poke your chest out more and whatnot, and I think that's just not my nature, but they're very far and few moments, but when they do come, I'll be honest with you, they hit you really hard. I think, like the day I found out that Lavish was signing... I remember calling my cousin. It was like 8 a.m. I'm like calling my cousin and I'm like, we did it. I just kept saying we did it. And then we both are just crying on the phone, right? So you have for me anyways, I have very far and few moments, but there are moments where I sit there and I'm like, whoa, like when I was 20, I was like, no, for sure this is going to happen. Guaranteed. My life's going to be this way. And now that that's actually happening, it's almost like I'm in disbelief. It does become overwhelming because I think for anybody who's wanted something their entire life and for them to see it actually happening, it can be overwhelming in the best way. Yeah.
What about like the mental aspect? Like there's certain high moments, and I'm sure there's moments that aren't as, you know, always, oh my God, this is happening. So how do you balance those out in terms of?
I have moments where it's obviously I'm on a high, and those for anybody are great. And then I have moments where I feel like I'm not doing enough. But I'm at the point too where I wake up. I've recently realized like I wake up and I'm healthy, first of all, blessed to that. I am in a situation where my dream is literally starting to unfold. Can't even describe the feeling of that. So those low moments are also very small because in the grand scheme of things, I'm like, I have nothing to complain about. Right. And I think that just like the simple fact of I can wake up and breathe, it means so much more now. It's a simple thing, but when you finally really grasp like what it is to live life, quote unquote, the simple thing of breathing is amazing. And like those down moments are more so me being like, I'm bored and I need to do more. I need to find the next artist. I need to do this. Right. Wow. But I think I'm right on the right track. And I think I've also really reflected lately on living in the moment. I think I think society's trained to always chase the next thing and think about the weekend, let's say, or think about the car or the next house you're going to buy. And I'm really, really trying to emphasize living in the moment. And I think that's where you start to get a very few down moments. Most of your life is high at that point.
Exactly. And everyone's chasing. Everyone wants to be at those high moments. And then when you get down, sometimes you want to get back to those points. Yeah. And
throughout COVID, everybody struggled. I don't know a single person who didn't struggle at some point mentally. I definitely did. So that really forced me to kind of strip everything down. And I think that's where I started to learn like how to find joy out of the simplest things, because, you know, we couldn't go out anywhere. You couldn't go hang out with your friends. You literally had to sit at home. And, you know, for me, I'm engaged, and I had a great time with my fiance because we got to spend so much time together. Right. But I had to really strip it down and realize like what's the simple things that made me happy. And the simple thing of waking up and having like a cup of tea, I found like was that peace was nice. And so I, even during COVID, which I will never want to go through COVID again, I still was able to take something out of it. And I think that's part of life too, is you should always try to find a learning curve, even in your low points, because there is something to learn. Because at the end of the day, we all made it through, and a lot of people probably came out a lot stronger.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment where you thought that this might not be for me, or certain things don't go the way that you were hoping to?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely had moments in the music, obviously, that where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I feel like I don't know anybody. And, you know, but I laugh because I'm like, I kind of lived my life like Hannah Montana, because I worked a 9 to 5. Like I always had a corporate job. Okay. And in the evenings, I would do the music stuff. On the weekends, I would do the music stuff. There was moments where I would leave work Friday night, catch a flight, go to Toronto, go there for the weekend, fly home Monday morning, and go to work for 8 a.m. Like I would be leaving Toronto around 4 a.m. to get here for 8. And I did that every weekend for a few months. Like I just wanted it so bad. Wow. But you do have moments where you're like, it's just not going the way. And I think that's part of it though. You're supposed to have a trial and error. You know, I kind of mentioned we had a couple artists and it just didn't work out. And it's not because it went horrible. It just, you do all the trial and error, and you do the learning so that you can get into the right position with the next artist, with the right artist. All the stars align and it works out well. So you have to go through those tough times.
That's really motivating to hear.
Yeah.
Like, you know, even just listening, I'm like, damn, I got to do
I
more.
never see it as like you failed.
Yeah.
I think the only time you fail is like if you really didn't reflect and learn something out of it. But you can learn something out of every situation. It's always just going to get you closer to the next thing.
Is it always about like drive? Like, I don't want to say motivation, but like just the inner feeling of always wanting to achieve your goals. Cause there's people who will be like, who do the work, the 9 to 5 or the job. And then they say, I don't have time. Like, what is the reason why you keep going?
Well, there's a really long version, which I think would be a whole other podcast. But I do let people know, you know, one, I'm a child of immigrant parents, right? That I think to anybody should be motivating. But in my situation as well, my parents only had a third child because they immigrated, and I'm the third child. So that to me is, had they not immigrated, I wouldn't exist. So I don't think me existing is by fluke. I don't think it's coincidence. Okay. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, oh, I'm super special. I mean, I don't take it that way. Okay. I really understand the fact that I'm like, whoa, like the difference between me being here and not was literally a 2 weeks different. My dad applied to immigrate without telling my mom. They got approved and they left 2 weeks later. Had they not gotten approved, I wouldn't be here. So I always tell people, like, the difference between me being here or not is 2 weeks.
Wow.
So that's the way I internalize it. And that is super motivating to me.
Yeah.
And as things progress, I think it just becomes more layering too, right? Like now when people approach me and they say, this is to me still really blows my mind when people are like, you work so hard and it makes me want to work harder. I think that's the biggest compliment. I'm like, sometimes I'm sitting there, I'm in disbelief that I'm like, anybody notice? Like people notice that I work, right? Yeah. But, you know, I have people that sometimes will stop me on the street and say that or message me. And especially in the Latin communities, when I have a Latina coming up to me and saying, you know, I look up to you for this reason, I can't even describe what that means to me.
Makes you want to push harder.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. I feel like now I'm an advocate for them and, you know, the whole, I'm a Latina, I'm from Winnipeg, and like you could do it, regardless of what you want. So the fact that I'm even associated with that type of feeling is unbelievable.
I want to touch on the immigrant family because I'm also from. My parents came from India, and for me to have a better life. And is there always a sense of like I want to like make sure that their efforts were worth it?
Absolutely.
Right.
Even if like my parents don't necessarily understand completely what I do,
Sure,
right?
yeah,
And you'll understand, like, I'm sure when you were talking about this, your parents were probably like, what?
They still don't get it.
Yeah. Which even funny, because when I did promotions, my dad's probably going to be mad about this, but when I did promotions and he heard about it, he like went up to my mom and he was like, you need to talk to her, because he thought I was like a stripper.
Oh no.
Right? Because it's just so different. It's so
Yeah.
different from their world, right? And the music thing still, that, you know, they're starting to kind of understand, but for anybody who has like immigrant parents, you know, they come here and they expect you to like go to school, get your 9 to 5, you get your paycheck. That makes sense to them. When you're doing something that's out of that box, it's a little difficult for them to understand. But all they really know is like, it's working. I'm happy, right? But I have had that conversation with them that, you know, a lot of what I do is because I'm motivated by them, right? Yeah. And I think my parents, they didn't even think about that. They just, like your parents, we just want to give them a better opportunity, right? So for them to hear me say like, I do this for you too, I think that also really hits home for them.
Yeah. And they're probably super proud. Or do they show it? I don't know if they're anything.
I had that conversation because one time
Mom, I'm doing something.
No, I had that conversation because I said to them, like, do you know what I do? Because I never hear you guys say anything.
Yeah.
And they realized that they said they brag to everybody.
Yeah, except.
But they don't ever tell me, right? So we had a good conversation about that. But it was also because I wanted to make sure that they knew why I also do what I do. Like, it's not just because of me. The plan is so that, you know, if everything goes the way it should, then like we're all going to be good. And that's my plan, right? Like, I want to make sure everybody's taken care of, right? So we had that conversation and it was a great one, right? And thankfully we have open communications with my parents, but they understood it. But it was, it was really funny to hear certain things where they're like, we brag to everybody, but I guess we never tell you.
No, I can feel that. I can relate.
Yeah.
What are your goals? Like, you seem like a really goal-oriented person. You know, let's pick this and I'm just going to go towards it and I'm going to go get it. What is like your end goal, or do you have an end goal, or does it ever end?
I don't think it ever ends for me. And I think that's probably why promotions worked for me. I think that's why music works for me, is like I'm like a forever chaser and I don't think it's ever going to end. I think I'm going to be like Clyde Davis and being like 80, 90 years old and still managing artists. I think everything always changes. I definitely have a mind where I'm like, what about this? I wonder if this could work. And like, I'll try to figure it out. I definitely, one of the goals is to like be able to get to a certain point where obviously, you know, my family and everything is taken care of, but also to be able to situate it and always have almost like a mentorship opportunity in Winnipeg. That's something that I have in the back burner with our team as well, to be able to create more opportunities. Because one thing I think of too is like, I know right now there's some kid in his house making beats, probably thinking like, I'm never going to get out of here, right? And just does it for fun. And it's like, those are the kids I want to find, right? And I know there's kids like that in Winnipeg. So there is a goal there where I would like to be able to come home and really be able to create opportunities and open up those floodgates for people that, and not have, I always want to make it easier for the next person. And every little thing that I do, I always think of like, how do I give an opportunity to someone? How do I connect this? How does this make sense, right? So that's kind of something I learned from my team as well. Always give someone an opportunity and don't expect anything back. Of course. Right? Yeah. So that's definitely always on the back of my mind. But no, I don't think there's ever, I think the goals are always going to be increasing. They're always going to keep moving and it's always going to be the life of chasing.
I love that. Well, going back to the kid in his room or her room, what would you say to them if somebody is just grinding and either making music, making beats, whatever it may be? What would their steps be? Like, what would be their road plan to get to
work your phone? Like slide in those DMs. Like, you know, people joke about sliding in DMs, but like slide in those DMs, have a pitch ready. Because there are individuals like me, like I will actually open my DMs. And if you're making beats, I'm going to listen, because I've found gems from people that were basically felt like they were going nowhere. And now, you know, they're working on projects, they're in LA and they're in studios. And like, I have one kid that, his name is Milano. And like, I found him, he was living in his parents' house in a farm just outside of Toronto, and found him, told him to come through. And like, yeah, he's like in LA making music, and like he's on Lav's album now. He's one of our main producers, and like my team are like, he's a musical genius. And he was like, I was selling beats for $200, and then you messaged me, right?
Yeah.
And then I've had people message me and like, can you listen to my music? Absolutely. Like at this point in my life too, I thankfully am able to take the time to actually listen. So yeah, slide into DMs, like shoot your shot. At the end of the day, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
So what does it hurt to at least ask? So if you're that kid in your room making beats right now, start looking at your favorite producers and start working with them.
Jay-Z said it best. Closed mouths don't get fed.
Absolutely. 100%. So it's like, shoot your shot. Go
keep
for
your
it.
mouth open. Keep asking. Something may happen.
Yeah, exactly. And you'd be surprised how many people are actually really willing to help someone that's trying. Because like, I know how difficult it is.
Exactly.
So I'm going to try to help someone if I can.
Worst come worst, you get left unseen. All right.
I'll still try to like give you some like some type of pointers, right?
Exactly,
So, but yeah, I definitely tell people like, message me, hit me up. I'll take the time, and like I can give you pointers at the very least.
Are managers and record labels constantly looking? Like, what's your process in terms of like finding people? Is it like you just type in beat maker or producer, or is it this person connection, or you see it somewhere?
Kind of two ways of the way how it works. So major labels and like the A&R life right now is going for like, okay, this person's trending, this person has numbers. My method is a little bit different because I'm looking for like the timeless artist, which is a lot more difficult, but it is a lot more rewarding. So a couple of things is, you know, when they talk about the it factor, for me, like that it factor is provoking emotion, and it has to be like instant for me. Like I've had like, for example, two producers that I met at a Latin showcase in Toronto. I heard they played 2 of their songs, and that was enough for me to know. And yesterday they were in a session with Lav, right? So I've been able to be like, okay, the it factor for me is, did you provoke emotion immediately? So that's something for myself. Another thing is personality has a lot to do with it, right? Are we able to like not just get along, but like, can you understand constructive criticism in the right way, right? Like every artist is obviously very protective of what they make, as they should be.
Yeah.
But do you understand that I'm like coming out of love? I'm not like trying to hate on you in any type of way, because why would I? So do they take constructive criticism very well? Are they adaptable? Are they open to exploring? Because that's a really big part of also developing an artist, is them being able to explore and try something. And I always break it down to them, like, let's just try it. And if you don't like it, just hit delete. Like it's over, right? It never happened. And a lot of the times when that happens, that's when they're like, oh, I didn't even know I can do something like that. So that's great. But for me, it's really, sometimes I have a thing that I want to look for, right? Like I want to look for the next this or a group of that. So I'll kind of start hunting and try to see. At this point, I've been pretty lucky that I've always kind of come across someone that piques my interest, and then kind of start building a relationship from there. But also right now too, it's like our main focus is Lavish, making sure that Lav is taken care of and is situated before we start taking on more, because I think sometimes managers feel like they have to have a roster, and I see it as like, get your bullet first, and the rest will be a lot easier. So just focus on the one, really get them situated, and the rest will come.
And it also gives you an opportunity to learn too, right?
Absolutely.
Because you obviously the artist before, you learned through them, but you're going to learn so much from Lavish as he is going to learn from you, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the first time it's really gone to these stages. So yes, I'm learning all the time. I think you learn a lot about yourself. I realized like I was not a patient person, and I thought I was. So you definitely learn patience in the industry, because it is the industry of hurry up and wait. Right? The amount of times that I'm like rushing to get to Toronto or to LA to just find out like, oh, it's actually moved 3 days from now. And you're like, great, right? But you learn a lot about yourself as well. And I think that's why sometimes too, I'm like, I'm not a big believer of having a ton of people on your roster just to say that you do. I'm more about like the quality over the quantity. So that's the way I work.
What about like, especially like some of these, once you get to a higher level, if you haven't been in those positions before, you're learning them. Are you like scared? Is there pressure on you, on the artists, on both of you guys to figure something out? Like, what if this doesn't go the way I want? Or what if...
We're always good. Like, we talk about like our pivot game. Right? We're like, we got a strong pivot game. You know, we're never our ankles are never broken, right? But we also really recognize what our strengths are and what we're not good at. We're never going to, as managers for our team, like we never sit there being like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Like, no, we don't know how to negotiate this deal. Let's find the person that does and outsource that. And we can learn from that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a really big strength in any situation to admit when it's not your strong suit. And then there's nothing wrong with outsourcing that because it's going to help you at the end of the day. Like, I don't know how to sit at a table and negotiate with a major label, but the lawyer does.
Yeah,
so like, let's get him. He went to school for that, right?
Yeah.
Like use the experts to do what you can't and learn from them.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and what does your team look like? You said there was 4 people?
So there's 4, I guess, like partners of the company. And then we have an army. And like I say, there's 4 managers, but you know, there's so many people that play a part, right? We have the DJ, the day-to-day, like Lav's right-hand man. You have the 4 of us. You have a stylist. You have a market. Like there is an army. Like Drake himself has like 300 people on his Rolodex, like as far as payment-wise, right? Like, so we're starting to build our army as well. There's so much that goes to like developing and getting something together in the right way. So that was another thing, right? Like we started with just a few of us and then it grew and, you know, we can't always do everything.
Sure.
We want to always be able to give him the best of the best. So, and you'd be surprised, like there's a lot of people that came in that really do their job really well. And they did it off the strength of the music because they loved his music and they knew, like they know he's going somewhere. So they're like, yeah, I'll help you guys out. Cause like I said, we're stretching dollars. Like it's shocking how far we made it with like nickels and dimes.
Wow. I also want to, and you're free to touch on as much as you like, but as far as if there's a artist who has gained some traction and has maybe been reached out or has reached out to a manager, what if they're hesitant in terms of giving up certain masters or percentages of their, you know, that's their art, right? And you see people more in the industry like Russ, for example, who's more on the independent side. You're just buy a $40 membership to DistroKid or something. Yeah. Let's just put up the music and you market it yourself. Are you allowed to speak on like how would that be a good idea versus what do you think of that side of someone being independent? It comes down to like
your goal. What is your goal? Okay. Right? And also again, who do you know? Right? If I'm a big advocate, like if you can do it independently through and through to the end, absolutely do it. Why would you ever give anything like that up? But, you know, there are artists that they're on their own. They don't have a team. They don't have anything. And like, they really do need the label push because they need that infrastructure. So absolutely, whatever is going to get you to your goal. I also know artists that they're perfectly happy, like not being the big mainstream artist. They just want to be able to create and get that out, right? Yeah. And if they make some coin off of it, amazing, right? So 1, it starts with your goal. And 2, it's also how much can you do on your own? The more you can do on your own and do it well, do that, right? You don't need the mercy of the label. But again, if you're also the kid that's like, I have nothing and no one, and you need that infrastructure and you know that's going to get you to your goal, go for it as well. It's really a situational. Now there's so many options that you're not at the mercy of one. So really sit down and map out the pros and cons. It's almost like dating, right? It's like you got to map out the pros and cons on like why you would pick a specific person, right? Sure. So you really have to do your due diligence and like don't get caught up in the fanciness of, you know, the sparkle of a label and I get to say I'm signed with this one. Just like I said earlier, regardless, it's all about like what is the right deal for you, regardless of who's offering it to you.
Sure. Okay, that's interesting. You know, because there's kids who, you know, with people we've had on the show, for example, and they'll be like, "Yo, I want to go the next step, but I just don't know it." And I think having people like you on the show to explain that side of the things, and even kids who, let's say, wanted to do music. I don't know if you've ever wanted to like sing or had that kind
I don't think
thing.
Anybody would want me to sing.
But there's always another side, right? Like let's say you really love music, you can still get involved in the music industry. There's so much more things you can do.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Like I came into it like thinking I was going to be a backup dancer, right? And like now
that's still possible.
I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. Not with the moves I have lately. But like I started as that, right? And then, you know, now I'm in a whole different life of it. But that's why I also said, like, it's invaluable to be just in the room. Because that's also, as you grow, you start to learn what you like and also what you're good at. And that's another thing you have to be really realistic with. Make sure you understand your strengths and move forward with that. I think sometimes people are like, I'm not good at this, I need to learn more about that. I'm like, or how about you just like take what you're good at and like really own those skills and move forward, right? It's kind of like in school, you know, when a kid is not good at math and they're like, you got to learn it. It's like, okay, but they're really good at writing. Like, just get through math and like do writing, right? And like own your skills. So I think that's what most people need to do. Just own your skills and be realistic with yourself.
Also, one other thing I wanted to touch on was as far as people who are beginning and they look at, oh, I need to get in the studio. Would you say that that is valuable? Or if you're not at the stage where you want to be, just get a mic and a computer and just go to work?
Most of the time, you even these big artists don't use a full studio anymore. Like, I know big artists that will just record out of their bedroom, or if they just like want to get out of their house, they'll rent a hotel and like do their setup. The great thing about now is, you know, you can get really good quality stuff really relatively cheap without having to pay the top dollars of a full studio. There are times that, you know, depending on what you want a full studio. Let's say you need like a live band or orchestra, like that makes a big difference. But like, no, for anybody who's starting, get yourself a home setup. And then this way too, you also have access to it whenever, and you can keep recording, you can keep working the creative muscle and move forward. I would say the best part would be you do that and then spend more of like your money getting the right mixing done. The mixing really makes a difference on the quality of the music and how clear it is, right? So my personal opinion is get your home set up, make sure it's obviously decent, but really focus more on making sure you get the right mixer, the right engineer to mix your music.
I mean, we've seen people like Billie Eilish who created her whole album out of her bedroom. I watched the documentary. I was like, what?
And like the bedroom was like tiny. And like it was like a closet.
And then Grammys on Grammys.
Yeah, exactly. So I you know, back in the day, yes, you needed a full recording studio because it wasn't steadily available. But I mean, now you can go Long and McQuaid. And pick everything up in a couple hours and like go on YouTube and learn how to set it up, right? Learn Pro Tools. Pro Tools is, if you, as an artist, that's another thing. If you can learn how to use Pro Tools as an artist, it's amazing because you're not also at the mercy of someone recording you all the time. You can record yourself, and that just cuts down so many things, so many errors. If you're having a creative moment, you can jump on and do it yourself. So really being able to like just do the simple things yourself can actually really speed things up for you.
Perfect. What would you say would be some key character traits that anybody who's trying to get into the industry would have, either from a manager side or an artist side?
Definitely really good at relationship building. You have to be able to build genuine relationships with people. You have to know when, I guess, to be selfish and when not. And I mean that in the sense of you don't want anybody to take advantage of you. That's the part where you need to be selfish and look out for yourself. But you have to be really selfless because you are giving up a lot of your life to put someone else first, right? So that's another thing you really need to know. You need to be someone who can pivot really well, someone who's adaptable, someone who knows how to take on stress. The fun times are amazingly fun, but the downsides are not always the best. Someone who is focused on the goal, that doesn't deviate and get lost in like, I guess like lost in the sauce, if they want to say. And I think the other thing is this is a pet peeve of mine when I see managers who are, you know, almost like trying to, like Diddy dancing in the video. And it's like, if you are trying to be the star yourself, I personally don't like it. This is not for you. Like, I'm perfectly happy being in the background. Like, I prefer being in the background. The spotlight is Lavish. He's the star, and he really is a star. So for me, that's kind of a pet peeve. If you yourself are trying to be famous, like, no, that's not the right intent, right? So I would say that's another thing for me.
That's great. Any advice you have? Usually my co-host Archie would ask this question, but I'm going to do it because he's not here today. Any advice you have for the person, let's say Winnipeg or a small town, who really has a dream and who really wants to make it happen? How do they turn their side hustle into a dream?
One, it's going to be internal. Like, if you have something you want, hold on to it. Like, I've had I have had a couple people throughout my years when I tell them what I want, and they're like, "No, that's nice." I remember one lady at a job that I worked. She asked me, "What do you want to do in life?" And don't say about your work.
Yeah.
Like, what do you really want? And I thought that was a great question. What do I truly want in life? And then it went south because I said, "Oh, I want to be in the music industry." And she's like, I remember when I was young and I had dreams, and then reality hit and I realized life doesn't work that way. That's exactly what she said to me, which now I'm like, I can't wait to write her a letter and tell her. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Like, if you really internally feel it, and that was one thing is like, even as a kid, I don't know why, I just felt a certain way about myself and like what I wanted out of life. So like, if you are one of those people who feels a certain way, like hold on to it. Don't let anybody stop you and tell you otherwise, because it is possible. And you know, make sure it's also very strategic in the way that you do it. You know, like I obviously made sure that my bills were paid and whatnot, and I did this on the side, but stick to it. Always make sure that you're doing it in the with the best intentions. Never have an ego, because it'll strip you down really quickly. But aside from that, someone who is trying to really make something happen, it's depending on the like industry you're in, and this applies to anything. It's like, if you don't know something, YouTube it. Like, there's so many ways to learn everything. Like, YouTube it, look at Instagram, use your phone, network, like start to map out how you're going to go from where you're at right now to achieving your goal. And then just start mapping it out and what those steps look like. And they're not always going to work, but that's where you have to pivot. Right. But that's like, people sit there and they want this and they automatically think of like, I'm just not going to be able to do it. If you actually just broke it down into steps, you probably surprise yourself on how easily you could probably accomplish it.
Wow. That's very inspirational. You know, I'm getting a lot from it. Keep pivoting, keep working, keep grinding.
Break it down.
Keep rising. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. We're on UMFM Radio every Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Check out Marcela J. Down in the description. We'll link everything down below. Check out Lavish as well. Any of our artists, anything that's coming up. Do you have anything that you would let us know that's coming up? Anything that you would like to plug?
There's a few things that are going to be coming up. Just waiting on some details. So, I mean, you'll put me on yours, but follow me at Hey Marcela J on Instagram. You'll see all the announcements coming up. There's a few things for the Latin communities that I'm going to be able to announce. Obviously, stuff with Lavish, and then, you know, feel free, if you're that kid in your bedroom making beats, slide in the DMs.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe. See you next time. Peace. Let's go.
Perfect.
That's it.
That was great. I loved it.
Thank you.